There's between last year and this year, there's been several other women who have became mothers for the first time. Between last year and this year, there have been some that had their mother and no longer have their mothers with them. There have been those who are now thinking about and getting ready for being mothers the first time. There are those who are in the presence and sitting maybe next to that woman that serves as a spiritual mother to them in the faith. If you have your mother both either physically or spiritually sitting next to you this morning, won't you just reach over and grab her hand and squeeze it one time and let her know how much you love her and you care about her. It's a precious thing indeed that God has given to us. There's no soul as gentle. There's no soul as ferocious and protecting and giving and sacrificing as the soul that our God put in mothers. But our mothers have been given to us by God to raise us in a certain way and to point us in a certain direction and to prepare us for those things in life. And so that's what we're going to be looking at this morning, is what is it that really would make her most happy. There was a survey that was done, and it wasn't a scientific survey, but they asked a lot of women, what is it that you would most want? What would be the perfect present for you on Mother's Day? And here are just some of them that was on the list. A clean house, just for a day, where things stay where I put them. I don't want to walk into a room and find Cheerios, goldfish, and fossilized ice cream. That some of the mothers said, I want someone else to change diapers all day. Some of the other ones said, I want to finish a task I start without being interrupted to wipe something, referee something, make something, watch something, or fetch something. And I think a lot of mothers identify with that. One just put very simply, I want to sleep in. And I think it is telling that this is the kinds of thing that most people think of when you're going to give your mother that perfect present. Maybe the child makes a coupon book and they give it to the mom that I will make sure that my room is clean today, or I'm going to let you sleep in, or I'm going to bring you coffee in bed and then leave, and those types of things. It's also interesting that in some of the surveys that have been done that are actually scientific in nature, They found that younger mothers, when they have their children and their children are around them all the time and they're dealing with their children and being a good mother to their children, that one of the things that they most want is some of their own personal time alone, away from their children. But when women are surveyed later in life, when they're older, they want less of their own free time and want to spend more time with their children. And what it reveals is something that's really interesting, is that sometimes we don't really take advantage of the time that we're given. We only have our children in our homes for a very short period of time. And as mothers, I commend you for the job that you do to train your children up in the ways of God. King Lemuel had such a mother. And so what we're going to be doing this morning from Proverbs chapter 31, those verses that were read, primarily verses 1 through 10, we're going to notice some of the things that this king's mother said to him. The first thing she says is what, my son? It's almost like when the wise man in Ecclesiastes says, what's the conclusion of the whole matter? What then? What is it that I want you to do? What is it that I want you to remember? The first thing that she says to her sons is, I want you to remember who you are. What, my son? And that's the first thing she tells him. You are my child. You are my son. A godly mother wants their children to remember who they came from. You're my child. You're not someone else's child. You belong to me. Or as we put it, I own you and everything that you think you own. Because you are mine. It's a very precious thing when you go to the Scriptures and you remember all the times that God says to His people that you are mine. You belong to me. You are my child. And because of that, we know there's a special relationship and a special bond that would exist. But she goes even further to remind him that she bore you. That she went through the labor. She carried you in her body. She is the one who brought you into this world, and we all know the continuation of that. She can take you out as well, right? But remember that she is the one that sacrificed of her time and her body, that she wanted you and desired you. She knew what was meant by the Psalm 127, verse 3. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. And she knows that that is something that comes from God. It is something that she knows that because she is your mother, you belong to her, that she bore you in her body, that responsibility she had towards you to protect you and to guide you and to raise you did not stop on that day that you came out of the womb. Because not only did she remind her son that she bore him, but also that she had vowed him, or that she had prayed for him, much like it was Hannah, you remember? That Hannah prayed to God to have a child and said that if you give me this child, if you remember the affliction that I'm going through, the heartache and difficulty I'm going through in wanting to have a child, if you give me that child, I will dedicate that child. I will lend that child to you all the days of his life. And that is what she did. The women in this audience that are godly women, when they were thinking about having children, prayed for that child that they either had or didn't have before, during, and after they had them. And it does not stop. Because children are something that God has given to you. And because of that, you have a certain responsibility to meet. And those godly women see to it about doing that. And so she reminds him that you belong to God. Lemuel, the name itself means given to God, which is really interesting. You notice the last two letters, L. And as we've been studying the names of God, most of the time when you see that E-L at the end of a name, it has something to do with a relationship to God. Lemuel means that he was actually given to God. So she had made this vow, and she had prayed for this child that he might be dedicated to her. And because of that, he was someone who was special. And in this special relationship, he had a special role. You are a king. You are a king. Sometimes we raise our children to not believe very much of themselves. But they do need to realize how special they are. We live in a society where it's counterintuitive many times, that we tell them that they are so special that they lose all sense of worth. But that's not so for the Christian. The Christian understands that you are special because of the relationship that you have, because of the situation you find yourself in. You are special. What your mother would want you to know this morning is that you belong to her. She bore you, and she recognized that you were a gift to her from God, and that she has a role that she has been trying to teach you throughout your life, and that is that you are special. That of all the people on the face of the earth, you are a king. You are a royal priesthood. You are a child of God. You belong to Him. You are His property because you were devoted from the time before you were even born to His service. And she wants you to remember that. That's what would make your mother happy. She continues, though, to talk about that he would exercise self-control. And I believe all good, godly mothers would want their children to exercise self-control. You remember the Bible? Yes, that's the book for me. I'll stand on the Word of God, the Bible. You know why your mother's saying that? It wasn't just so that you would be quiet or go to sleep. It was so that you remember later on the Bible. Practice self-control. The next few verses she says, it is not for kings, verse 3, first off, do not give your strength to women, nor your ways to that which destroys kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes intoxicating drink. This is why, lest they drink and forget the law and pervert the justice of all the afflicted. The strong drink, he says in verses 6 and 7, are for those who are destined for death. And so the first thing he reminds them is that remember what you've been taught. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from that. King Lemuel was brought up to understand you have to be careful around the opposite sex. Your mother wants you to be careful about dating and about being around those of the opposite sex. Indeed, anything that's going to cause you to lose a sense of moderation and propriety, that's going to cause you to stumble and to fall. In Proverbs 6, you remember earlier, Proverbs 6, verses 20 through 29, and this is not the only place in Proverbs, but it's one that speaks both of the father and the mother. Proverbs 6, starting at verse 20. Here he says, my son, keep your father's command, and do not forsake the law of your mother. Bind them continually upon your heart. Tie them around your neck. When you roam, they will lead you. When you sleep, they will keep you. And when you awake, they will speak with you. For the commandment is a light, and the law a lamp, and the law a light. Reproofs of instruction are on the way of life, to keep you from the evil woman, from the flattering tongue of a seductress. Do not lust after her beauty in your heart, nor let her allure you with her eyelids. For by means of a harlot, a man is reduced to a crust of bread, and an adulteress will prey upon the precious life. Can a man take fire to his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be seared? So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife. Whoever touches her shall not be innocent. Chapter 7 continues that same type of theme about staying away from certain people. And that's what your mother has taught you over and over again. You go down that road, you're going to be burnt by it. Be careful about being around those types of people and individuals, especially those of the opposite sex, that are going to cause you to lose hold of your self-control. And along those lines, he also told King Lemuel, her son, you have no business drinking. She didn't say unless, but a little. She says, you have no business doing it. Which of us did not have a mother who just told us that flat out? You have no business being there. You have no business doing that. You have no business touching that. You have no business drinking that. You have no business watching that. You have no business saying that. She wanted her son to know, you have no business drinking. None whatsoever, because it is not for kings. It is not for you. People in the culture, we often hear people talk about, yes, but in that culture they drank because, the water and all this kind of stuff, and yet she still told her son, you have no business touching it. So his mother didn't care if everybody else was doing it. Right? The same way it's supposed to be for mothers today. And a godly mother doesn't care if everybody else is doing it. Because you are not everybody else. You are her child. She bore you. She prayed for you and dedicated you. She's been training you. And the thing that she's been training you in is this: don't touch it. There's so many different reasons why that we could go through. Proverbs 23 is one really good example. Proverbs 23, and starting at verse 29. This is one of the perhaps most famous passages about the dangers of drinking. Proverbs 23 and starting at verse 29. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has contentions? Who has complaints? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? Those who linger at wine. Those who go in search of mixed wine. Do not look at the wine when it's red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it swirls around smoothly. At last it bites like a serpent and stings like a viper. Your eyes will see strange things, and your heart will utter perverse things. Yes, you will be like one who lies down in the midst of the sea, like one who lies at the top of the mast, saying, they have struck me, but I was not hurt. They have beaten me, but I didn't feel it. When shall I awake that I may seek another drink? Do not touch it. To this king, she says that if you do these things, you will drink and you will forget the law. You will pervert justice of all the afflicted. You are a person of great responsibility, my child. And as a person of great responsibility, you cannot have anything in your life that interferes with your judgment. Rather, as Christians, we cannot allow those things in our life that would interfere with our judgment, that would make us forget the law. Whether that be a person or a substance, they have the same effect. They will bite us in the end if we're not watchful. Proverbs 10 and verse 1 says that a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son, the one who would do such things, is a grief to his mother. Proverbs 15 and 20 is a little bit stronger. At the end it says that a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son despises his mother. Think of it this way: when you violate those things that your parents, and as we're talking about this morning, your mother prayed to God about, one of those things that she probably prayed to God about and continues to, keep him out of those places he should not be, with the people he should not be with, doing the things he should not be doing, because I told him you have no business doing it. And when you do that, the Bible says you despise your mother. There is no pain I have ever seen that is vivid and as strong as the pain of a mother's heart when a child turns on them. It is brutal to see and brutal to witness. So don't be guilty of it. The Bible, that's the book for me. That's where we stand, is on that word. That's why she has taught us. Your mother has been around longer than you have. Obviously. And so she has seen some things. Guarantee your mother has seen the horror of people's children and what has happened to others when they give themselves to women and alcohol or drugs. The devastation that is caused. The financial ruin that is caused. The broken marriages that is caused. Ultimately, the unfaithfulness to God that it causes. So again, she would like to have her child practice self-control. She'd also like to know that your life is being a blessing to others. To this king, her son, she says in verse 8, "Open your mouth for the speechless. In the cause of all who are appointed to die, open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and the needy. No matter how great you become, O king. No matter how great you are, you should always be willing to humble yourself. As Paul wrote to the Philippian brethren in Philippians 2 and verse 3, let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Let each of you look out not only for his own interest, but also for the interests of others. No matter how high you are, no matter how much money you make, no matter how much you attain to in life, if you become the king himself, do not forget to plead the cause and be of service to others." Do we have to remind ourselves of Jesus once again? Taking the towel and getting on his hands and knees with the water and washing the feet of his disciples. And if he, being the master, does that to them, what should we be doing to one another? Your mother wants to know that your life is actually a blessing to others, not a curse. That you are not a weight that others are having to carry around, but that your life is one that you are living as an abundant life of service and helping and being there for other people and managing those things in your life so that you may help others. There is no one more helpless than the one who is the orphan and the widow. In James 1 and verse 27, pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their trouble, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. And the reason that she tells you to do that is this: because that is what she did. If you grew up in a godly home, you saw a godly woman who used her time to go out and be of service to others. She made food for those who had just had children, or who had a death in the family, or had some tragedy that was there. She was there to help them do the laundry, or to clean the house, or to do those other things that might be needed. She might, as our dear sister did in her lifetime, going to the nursing home and talking to those who may not have family, or are being left out of society and feeling unwanted and uncared for. That's who your mother was. It's just like Dorcas, that when she passed away in Acts 9 and verse 36, that this woman named Tabitha, translated Dorcas, this woman was full of good works and charitable deeds which she did. And there were those who were able to come around and say, look what she did. Was it a huge thing? Not really. Not in the overall scheme of the world. But that testimony is given to us by God himself, that we might talk about it on days such as this. That's the blessing of having a godly mother. And that's what a godly mother wants you to know. That your life is valuable. Not because you're the king, but because you help those who are helpless. You give voice to those who have no voice. And you stand for those who cannot stand on their own. That's what your mother would want from you. And that's the kind of thing that would make her happy. You know, I can remember when the kids were small, acting out the different stories of the Bible. And I can remember the story of the Good Samaritan. And it was comical to watch as Orrin would lay on the floor. And he said, "Oh, somebody help me, somebody help me. I've been beaten and robbed. I need help, I need help." And Jaden would come by and say, "I'm not helping." Until she became the Good Samaritan that was there. And it would teach vivid lessons, but one of the lessons is be of service to others. Be the Good Samaritan that's there. And lastly, your mother would want you to find a godly spouse, a virtuous woman, a virtuous wife who can find. She tells her son her worth is far above rubies. Proverbs 31 is that chapter that we always go to when we talk about what a godly woman is supposed to be. And when you look at that characteristic of the godly woman that's there in Proverbs 31, it is so high and it's so lofty that most women say, I can never attain to it. And we readily admit that it seems to be perfection. And in a lot of ways, it almost seems harder to be considered a virtuous wife than it would be to be considered an elder in the Lord's church, because the qualifications are extremely stringent. But I think it's there for a reason. A virtuous wife, who can find? Her worth is far above rubies. That man that we know in the parable in the New Testament about the pearl of great price, he was going over land and sea searching for this one pearl, so that when he found it, he was willing to give up everything that he might obtain it. I believe what she's trying to teach her child here is this: slow down and take the time to find a woman that is godly. Don't settle. We told our kids over and over again, don't you ever settle. Ever. Make sure that person is worthy of your time and attention, because your time and attention is focused on God. And so you make sure that that person is the right one. You know, if you're a 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old young man or young woman, one of the things that is easy to pop into your mind is, I'm never going to find anybody. I'm never going to find true love. Well, you're only 17, 18, 19 years old. Slow down. Take your time and find a good one. Don't settle. Never, ever settle for less than what God would want. If she is one who truly fears the Lord, then can it be said the heart of her husband safely trusts in her, and that he would lack no gain, and the rest of the things that are mentioned in that such blessed chapter that we have. In Proverbs 19 and verse 14, it says that houses and riches are an inheritance from fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. And this is why. It's because God has given you a father and a mother to teach you to take your time and find a good one. A virtuous wife, who can find? You need to search for her like you would for rubies and fine jewels, because they're not hanging out on the street corner. They're not hanging out in false religions. They're not hanging out in these social settings that they shouldn't be. You're not going to find them on social media putting out things for all the world to see that people should actually be ashamed of doing to begin with. You find them by looking for them, and looking for them in the right places. That's the ones that God will give you. Don't let it be just the outward, like the arranging of the hair, the wearing of gold, or putting on a finer apparel. Rather let it be the hidden person of the heart, a person you're not going to find unless you start digging. The one that has that incorruptible beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very precious in the sight of God. For in this manner, in former times, the holy women who trust in God also adorn themselves. That's the person that your mother would want you to find, is that godly spouse. And so lastly, the thing that would make your mother happy is let her know how much you appreciate her. Let her know how much you love her and how much you appreciate all that she has done. Proverbs 23 and verse 22 says this: listen to your father who begot you, and do not despise your mother when she is old. As we said, the young mothers, that nap time where maybe somebody would bring them a meal in bed and then leave and give them the rest of the day to themselves. That's not the way you're going to feel about that when you get older and your kids have moved out of the house. You're going to long for that time, and you're going to miss it. At most, you'll probably have about 18, maybe even 20 years or so with your children at home. Then how often are they going to be coming back around? Your mother wants to know that you appreciate her, that you recognize what it is that she has done for you. Thank her for her wisdom, her love, and her discipline. At the end of this chapter, her children, it says in verse 28, her children rise up and call her blessed. The word blessed there means is straight, is level, is right. Her children rise up and call their mother straight. They rise up and call their mother level. They rise up and call their mother right. That's what it means to be blessed. And that's what our mothers were. Let her know about that you appreciate all those times that she spent restless hours talking to you to discipline you. Let her know how special she is. That word praise that is used also in those verses. At the end of verse 28, her husband also, he praises her. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is passing, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. That word praise that is used there means that which shines. Let her know what makes her special, why it is that she shines, and she is different from all of those that are around her. Let her know that she excels all. Tell your mother today that many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. Our 3 words at the beginning. Tell her thank you. Thank you, Mom. Thank you. Take her by the hand, look deeply into her eyes, and just tell her thank you. If there's a spiritual mother that you have, do the same thing. If you're longing to be a mother, take the advice of this mother. This is what she was teaching her child. Teach it to yours as well. And God be thanked that we've had so many godly mothers among us. Let's go to our God in prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are so thankful to you. Lord, you have blessed us with so many wonderful things. To know that we were created in your image, that we have an immortal soul within us, that we have within us the ability to choose that which is right and to refrain from that which is wrong. To know, Father, that you've given us so many relationships, that of the church, that we can encourage and edify one another through the study of your word and through the things that we do together on those occasions of worship and study. But especially now, Father, we want to thank you for the homes that you've given to us. We're grateful for those women that we've had in our lives that are our mothers or who have served as mothers, who have taught us the gentle character of godliness, who have taught us the true direction, that hold us accountable with the strength of character and not the strength of muscle. That know, Father, that they love us above all those things that are here in the world, that make us feel special each and every day, that we can trust in them and know that they are doing those things that are for our best. We pray, dear God, that you help us to recognize them, to praise you for them, and let them know this morning, this day, how much we love them as well. Forgive us, Father, when we fall short. Forgive us when we forget. Forgive us when we forget the instructions that our mothers have given to us, and help us to return to those good paths once again. We pray these things in the name of your Son. Amen. The question I leave with you is this: are you making your mother happy? If your life is not a reflection of the things that your mother taught you, that were the things of God, let's change that this morning. Let's make amends. If you are not a Christian, there's nothing on earth that would make your mother happier than you obeying the gospel. And the reason being is because the thing that will make your mother happier than anything else is to be able to be in heaven, sitting at the feet of Jesus for all eternity, surrounded by her family. That's what she wants more than anything else. If you're subject to the invitation, if we can help you in any way, won't you please come and together we stand and sing.